Hey everybody, in this video we are going over the 7 key ideas from Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely. Coming right up. And a big thanks to everyone who's been so supportive of the podcast project that we're working on. Dan Ariely is going to be another one of the guests on the podcast. So just like I've been saying recently, if you have questions for him, questions we can use in the podcast, be sure to put those down in the comments as you go along through the video so your questions can become part of the process. Key idea number 1 is that options distract us. We love to have options. It's human nature. We like to have options. It makes us feel comfortable. It makes us feel safe, to feel like we have lots of different ways to go. But in fact, taking lots of options, putting in the energy to keep lots of options open can actually slow us down. It can impair us. And he gives examples of this. He's got students who have 2 majors and they're trying to work both majors, but it really is going to require them to have 5 years of education at a place like MIT where they're already working hard, spending a lot of money. So they're putting in all this extra time, work, and energy to keep both options open, when in the end, they're going to go into one career, not 2. So it's not a great use of their time. Same thing with another student he has who's a girl who has 2 boyfriends. And she's got this old boyfriend who she likes, but she knows she's not really going to stay with. But she wants to keep the option open while she's pursuing a romance with this new guy who she's really into and really excited about. Eventually, she's got to let go of one option to move forward with the other. But we like to do this. It feels good as people to have lots of options. The solution to this is a tough one. The solution is to choose. And not just to choose, but to make hard commitments so that you don't go back and go find options again. So this is like taking that death ground strategy where you burn the boats behind you. There's a story of great conquerors who will roll up on a beach somewhere and then they tell their troops to burn the boats, to break all the pots. There's going to be no cooking meals. There's going to be no escaping by sailing away. We're going to take this beach. We're going to take what we've got. We're going to keep going. That strategy of moving forward. Same thing with a formalized commitment, a legal process like marriage. That's something that is designed to be an institution that will hold people together. You make this commitment, you're going to stay with it, and that's going to hold you into this commitment rather than spending all this time and energy to be distracted and keep chasing options. We're going to really firmly set in on this commitment, and that's what Dan Ariely suggests as the solution for this dilemma of our desire to keep options open. Key idea number 2 is the cost of zero cost. It seems so enticing to get things for free. Yesterday, I made a couple purchases on Amazon. I got a book for another interview that I'm doing to prep, and I got a new hard drive to keep all these files on, and it came out to about $70, and then there were $13 in shipping fees, and that just seems so painful to pay shipping. It's so nice when you have the free shipping and you don't feel that pain of spending money on something you're not even getting. You're just spending it on the process of shipping it from A to B. That free feeling is so much better. There's something that we love about free, but often things that seem free aren't really free. A great example of this for me, my friends in the military, I think, is the Veterans Day free meals. There are lots of places that do a great thing. They offer veterans free meals or free slushies or free ice cream, things like that. But when you go to do something like that, you're going to spend money in gas to get there. You're going to spend time to get there, time to wait in line, and then maybe you get something that it wasn't even exactly what you wanted. Maybe there are limited options on what you can get or what flavors or what meals and things like that. And in the end, you might rather have had something else anyway, but it seems like there's no cost to it because you got it for free. But in fact, there was cost. There was time, energy, planning, and other things, and opportunity cost. You could have spent that time in another thing. You could have spent that money on something else. So all these things, when they seem like there's zero cost, there can in fact be cost. Key idea number 3 is the problem of procrastination and self-control. Often when things seem distant, we don't recognize how important they are, and we don't give them the attention that they need. Dan Ariely makes points about this with issues of long-term health, and he even explains in his TED Talk, one of his many TED Talks, he's given a lot of them, about how he had an issue with his liver and needed to take an injection for his liver 3 days a week for many, many weeks. But every time he took this injection, it would make him nauseous. And so other people weren't sticking to this treatment plan, but he stuck to it because instead of associating the injection with how he was going to get nauseous and throw up, instead he would get movies early that morning. He's a big movie buff. And he'd get them all in his backpack and be carrying them around all day looking forward to watching those movies in the afternoon. He'd get home from class, he'd put in the movie and take the injection right away. So he associated the injection with this much more positive experience of watching the movie, and then he'd get sick later. This is something we can do. We can make these substitutions. We can also set very firm self-imposed deadlines, and we can even set self-imposed punishments to help us to get things done, to stop procrastinating and to have the self-control to get things even though they might seem distant. A great example of this in my own life is my friend Kate. She had 5 months to write a book. She'd made a deal with her publishers. She was going to have the book done in 5 months, and she had 5 more sections to write in her book. And she came to me and she said, I don't know what to do about this. I got to get this book done. I don't know how to do it. It seems overwhelming. And I said, why don't you write me 5 checks, each one for $100, and give me a list of 5 charities that you hate, 5 causes that you are dramatically opposed to. And if you don't send me by the end of each month one of those 5 sections, I will send one of those checks for you to this cause that you hate to make sure that you do this. And every month, right at that deadline, just before midnight, that last night of the month, she would always send me that section of the book, and she managed to write all 5 sections and complete the book because she didn't want to pay to these charities that she hated so much. So that's one way that you can make these self-imposed punishments. Key idea number 4 is that financial dishonesty is getting easier. As we use less and less cash, it may actually be easier for us to cheat things financially. Dan Ariely explains that he has a theory that we are trained in society to develop these senses for what is right and wrong pretty clearly, and that we actually have brain centers that can pick up on this, but only for big transgressions, things that are clear, things that are visible. If it's something else, if it's something that you can rationalize, you often will. We find ways to rationalize things that are to our benefit when it's not so clear-cut. So that's the danger here. And when we stop working with something clear-cut like cash, and instead we look at other things, maybe digital currency, it's easier to let things slide. And he does this experiment where he takes Cokes, bottles of Coca-Cola, a 6-pack of Coca-Cola, puts them in refrigerators all over dorm rooms, all around campus. And then he waits. And in 72 hours, those Cokes are always gone. People always take them. Then he does the same thing with the same value, 6 $1 bills. And he puts those on a plate in all of these refrigerators. Comes back 72 hours later, and none of the dollar bills are gone. Big change here when you see cash. When it's visible, clearly tangible, you know what it's worth. But if we have ones and zeros on a computer, if we have digital money in a bank, cryptocurrency, your taxes, these things that are more gray, not so clearly visible as cash, it becomes easier to rationalize, to let yourself slide, and even to cheat. This book suggests a solution to this cheating problem. He suggests that instead of just trying to be a good person, to actually remind yourself, to post up some sort of moral code, some sort of values, to even put up something like the 10 Commandments, or to read a spiritual text, to be reminded of this value system that you have, and to be more aware of it, rather than just expecting yourself to hold on to it and giving yourself a chance to rationalize doing something later. Key idea number 5 is the problem of relativity. We make so many decisions based on how things seem to compare to each other. We don't really know how much most things that we buy are worth. We make decisions based on looking at a range and then finding a place in that range. So for example, this is how people make decisions often about wine. You look at a set of bottles of wine at different prices, and then you decide a price that you're comfortable with, but you don't actually know how the $15 bottle compares to the $35 bottle compares to the $100 bottle. You just look at them. Like, for example, these. I can look at these 2 bottles of wine that I have, and I can say, well, on this one, I recognize the name Robert Mondavi. That's a brand name that I'm familiar with in wine, so maybe it would make sense for this one to be worth more than this one. So if they're about the same price and I think I'm getting a deal for this brand name one, that's how we make decisions. It's not that sophisticated. We don't really know because so many things are relative. The trouble with this is that we end up looking at everything being relative, especially the way that we look at even our own possessions, the stuff that we have. We always want more, we always want better, we are always going to want bigger houses, finer cars, and there's one solution to this, and it's tough. The solution is to opt out of this game of ever escalating, keeping up with the Joneses, and it's hard. In the book, they tell a story of a tech entrepreneur who's very, very wealthy, and he gets a Porsche Boxster, and then he realizes that he doesn't want that lifestyle, because he says that guys who drive Porsche Boxsters, then they want to become guys who drive Porsche 911s, and then those guys want to become guys who drive Ferraris, and it's just this ever-escalating thing, and you're never happy with the car you have. So he opts out, he gets a Toyota Prius, and he stops playing the whole game of these ever-escalating sports cars, and that's the solution, is to opt out. Key idea number 6 is that we tend to overvalue what we have, the things that are ours. We are very attached. We instantly become very optimistic about anything that has to do with ourselves. This can be our health. We can say, well, I'm eating this thing, but I'm not going to get heart disease from it. Or we can say, I'm a better than average driver. Every driver on the road thinks that they're a better than average driver. That's how everybody perceives themselves. So we get overly optimistic about these things. And when we have our own stuff, say your own house, you're looking around the neighborhood and looking at what other people's houses are worth. You may think that yours is worth more than the average in the neighborhood. Very common for people to feel that way. We get attached to these things. And the solution here is if you can look at yourself as a non-owner when making decisions about how to value things. You can step back and say, if this wasn't my house, if I were an outsider looking in, if this wasn't my car, if this wasn't my set of whatever you're selling, if you can step back and look at it as a non-owner, that will help you to more clearly evaluate the value of these things. And a side note, we tend to get caught up too in things that we work on. Dan Ariely calls this the IKEA effect. If you buy IKEA furniture and then you go through the trouble of putting it together, you're going to value it as being worth more and be more attached to it. And if you spend a lot of time and energy and you really struggle with it and then get to the result, then you value it even more than if you'd made it simply. Just interesting. And key idea number 7 is the cost of social norms. We have social norms where things operate very comfortably. If you ask a friend to help you out with something, if you've busted your car and you ask your neighbor to come and look at it, that usually works out pretty well and they're happy to help and everybody gets along well. But if you ask your neighbor and you offer them $5 to do it, now there's a difference here. It's funny, by actually giving them more in an economic sense, you're giving them less. They feel cheated because now you've gone from social norms to market norms, and their time is worth a lot more than $5 in the market. So in getting out of the social situation, going to a market situation, now you've actually cheated them, and that's how they feel. People feel upset when you start to offer them these dollar value things. A good way around this is gifts. Because gifts aren't clearly measured, then it's easier to give gifts with people as a way of saying thank you rather than giving a monetary thing. And even though you may not know, maybe you want to give them a gift, a bottle of red wine, and in fact they like white, you could give them exactly a dollar value and say, here, I'd like you to go out and buy your favorite wine with this. But again, that gets into the market norms. So you give people a gift, maybe it's not exactly what they want, maybe it's not exactly worth what their time was worth, but that's a good way to still have this nice giving and sharing with people, but not getting into those market norms and not getting into that awkward situation of people feeling a market norm coming into a situation that's normally just between friends. So Dan Ariely, Predictably Irrational, he's going to be the next guest on the podcast. So if you have questions for him, put those down in the comments, let me know, and I'll catch you next time.